The Buddha probably cornered this term around this idea of that Agni Puja and the fire ritual, the fire worship. And not only was it an analogy of the fire that's in the mind, the fire of craving, the fire of greed, hate, and delusion, but also it was a kind of a double meaning, saying to those who practice these rites and rituals, no, put out the fire. Smiles are, oh yeah, very good. This is starting to get going. It's a perma-smile, we call it. Very nice. Well, that was a lovely introduction. I missed the talk on dana, but I think I was here to scoop the cream of it. And so tonight I thought we could explore a very a light topic, which is Nibbana. This topic is really dear to my heart because it touches upon such an important notion of the Buddha's teaching. And there seems to be a lot of different understanding of what that word even means. And so I think it's really important for us to really understand, well, what does the Buddha mean by that word, Nibbana, which is such a central aspect of his teaching and our practice at the same time. Like one of the suttas says that the Buddha was sitting with a Brahmin, and this Brahmin pretended that he knew what Nibbana was, and the Buddha said, "What is Nibbana, Brahmin?" And the Brahmin goes, this is Nibbana, this is Nibbana. I'm healthy and I'm doing well and I have everything I need. It's like, this is not Nibbana, Brahmin. And so it's really interesting to learn more on this topic and to learn what is Nibbana, what is this thing that the Buddha called Nibbana. But before we begin, I would really like to make this a little bit more as an exchange, and I would really like to hear a few people, like, what do you think is Nibbana? What do you think that means? Have you ever heard of that word in the first place? Yeah? Okay, good. And just please follow with me. It's not an exercise of, seeing who's right and who's wrong. It's really more to get some flavor out of this so that we can get a beautiful, colorful spectrum of ideas, and then we can work with that. So I would be really grateful if a few people could share what their understanding of that word is.
I'll start with the technical terms.
Great.
As I understand it.
Thank you.
Ni means no, Bhana means fire. No fire.
Yeah, good. And so how would that relate to our practice?
I guess it would mean the calming of all the tension and the tightness that we
Yeah.
experience.
Good. You've been attending the morning pujas. Great. Thanks. Thank you for your answer. Yes, Abe.
For me, the way answered the resonates very well. Like
Yeah.
Only the seeing in the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Hearing.
Yes, only the seen in the seen, the heard as the heard, the perceived as the perceived. Sounds a lot like yatha bhuta jnana dassanam, like seeing things as they are. Yes, yes. Or going through a class 4 rapid. Upside down. Yes, obviously. Any more ideas? Oh yes, Serena.
I just remember reading about enlightenment.
Yes.
In many magazines and things like that, but it sounded it was like it was for the very few people.
Yeah.
And it was the most mind-blowing experience, but it was never really how ordinary people could get there. So it was very tantalizing, but and attractive. But
yes.
Not enough information on really how lay people could get there.
Yes. Tied to that notion of enlightenment or awakening. Yeah, definitely. And this is another really interesting topic, by the way, because when you start learning more about differences in different spiritual traditions, the definition of enlightenment in certain schools actually differs. So it's really interesting to learn more about these things. I've spent, in fact, quite a bit of time researching that topic of enlightenment in what it means in Buddhism, what it means in all the various schools of Hinduism, and it's really quite interesting to understand where that leads. And Nibbana seems to be a little bit more associated with, of course, Buddhism. Do you think that it was a term that existed before the Buddha? Yes?
It must be, right? If it means...
Must be.
It just means no fire.
No fire, yeah. Great, yeah. So... Nirvana, and actually, to break it down in the actual word-for-word translation in Pali, ni is no, effectively, and vana is actually from most agree that this would be really about the root wa, which means to blow, which means ni. No blow or blowing out, basically, like the putting out of a fire. That's what it really means. In Pali, the word fire is agni, or there are probably other words too. And that very word agni is really interesting for us because do you know a little bit about the Vedic traditions? And maybe some of you have practiced yoga before. I know you have yogic backgrounds. Some people here have ever read the Rig Veda. Just light read on the side of your bed. Yeah, there's some nodding of the heads. Yeah, and what do you find in the Rig Veda?
Hymns.
The hymns, yes, the hymns, the mantras. And what does that sound like? I know I've got all these questions for you. Yes, instructions on making offerings. Exactly the answer I was looking for. And are you familiar with something that is called the Agni Puja? The Agni Puja, the fire sacrifice, the fire puja, basically, which was a huge part of the spiritual practice, the mainstream spiritual practice at the time of the Buddha. And this was really tied to rites and rituals that the Brahmins had to basically offer things to the fire, offer things to Agni, the god Agni. And in terms of offering, and they would do these hymns, recite these hymns, and offer food or whatever it would be to the fire. And there is quite interesting correlations to be drawn from that, because the Buddha in one way was also speaking about Silabbata Paramasa, which is the attachment to rites and rituals, is one of the first fetters that is let go of at stream entry. When one understands really the Dhamma, one really understands that rites and rituals do not really lead to awakening in the Buddha's understanding of things. And this also ties into what my understanding is, anyways, having read the Vinaya. There's this beautiful story where the Buddha just gets enlightened, and I'm not sure anybody read the Vinaya here. Usually it's that part of the canon that people will not necessarily go to. It's a little thicker, mostly for monks, because the Vinaya is basically the monks' rules and the way that we live, basically. And there is a beautiful story in there, though, because the Vinaya is also a repository of basically the biography of the Sangha and the Buddha. This is another place where we can get really interesting stories. And in there, the Buddha just gets enlightened, go to Deer Park, Isipatana, and he kind of teaches the first few disciples. And at some point, he encounters a group of 1,000 fire worshippers. And these are on the side of the Ganges, and they are worshipping the fire and basically doing the Agni Puja and jumping in the freezing cold water. Because the state of Bihar in the cold season actually does get quite cold. It's like the desert almost. In the daytime, it gets really, really, really hot, but there's big contrast in temperature. And anyways, they're doing their fire sacrifice and then jumping in the river and then going back to the fire. And the Buddha comes and he basically impresses them with psychic powers, psychic abilities, and basically wins them over. Not wins them over, but slowly teaches them what he's discovered, mainly to the head of these fire worshippers, which is Kassapa, not one of the foremost disciples. It's another Kassapa. And that Kassapa had the wrong view, that he thought he was an arahant. And the Buddha kept doing these amazing displays of psychic abilities, and he's like, this ascetic is really good, but he's not an arahant like me. And there's stories of like fighting like a fire snake and walking on water and like a flood and all that. So I'm not going to go into that. But anyways, so I think the Buddha probably cornered this term around this idea of that Agni Puja and the fire ritual, the fire worship. And not only was it an analogy of the fire that's in the mind, the fire of craving, the fire of greed, hate, and delusion, because obviously this is where I'm going with this. But also it was a kind of a double meaning, saying to those who practice these rites and rituals, was like, no, put out the fire and cool down. So basically, I think personally it had a double meaning, cooling the mind and also putting aside rites and rituals. There seems to be different understanding of how to attain stream entry, for example, and how that takes place, and what does Nibbāna mean, because some people seem to say Nibbāna is like the Nirodha, basically. Once one goes through all of the jhanas, one experiences Nirodha, and then that is also Nibbāna. But then other people seem to hold the view that no, Nibbāna is only meant as the putting out of the fire of greed, hate, and delusion. So however that happens, this is called Nibbāna. And there are instances in the canon for both. So this word is basically a loose idea that the Buddha liked to play with as to whether it was talking about the putting out of the fire of consciousness, which is constantly active, all these sankharas, these mental activities. And this is what we read every morning, because this is really important to understand in our practice. This is peaceful, this is sublime. That is the complete, I know it in Pali. Etam Santam, Etam Panitam, Yadidam Sabba Sankhara Samato, Sabuppadi Patinisago, Tanha Kayo, Virago Nirodho Nibbāna. And so, this specific definition is probably the most accurate definition that we have for Nibbana in the canon. And it comes back over and over again in many different suttas. So this is peaceful, this is sublime. So that's already a good start. I just like to remind people that when the Buddha broke through to awakening, the first thing that he did, they have all these 7 different stations at Bodh Gaya, even though the stations are not actually at the right place. There's like a monument and saying, this is where the Buddha stood for 7 days, just looking unblinkingly, without blinking at the Bodhi tree in gratitude kind of thing. And this is where he stood, being protected by Muchalinda, the serpent king, for 7 days. But it's not actually there, it's actually 2 kilometers away. But they just want people to be really enthralled with this is Bodh Gaya, it's all happened here. But I like to remember that the Buddha, the first thing that happened with what he did after awakening was that he sat in one posture without moving for 7 days, enjoying the bliss of freedom. And then he stood up and moved to another tree and did the same thing. Just wasn't enough. So this path is beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, and beautiful in the ending. And when we practice it properly, that's how it should be. And I think, judging by the smiles, I think that you're on the right track. This is peaceful, this is sublime, namely the stilling of all mental activities. And this is not going into great depth, but I've explained this yesterday with the simile also of the starlings and how consciousness actually dissolves as we let go of all the sankharas, all the mental activities. Breaking free from all mental limitations or acquisitions are these views that we hold about everything, that actually in the end we think we're holding all these views and we're really smart about everything, but in the end it's imprisoning us. And to let go of that and all mental limitations and all concepts is a really, really blissful and deeply liberating experience. The complete calming of tension, tanha kayo, this is obviously the destruction of craving. I like the complete calming of tension. It brings a little bit of a different flavor to it. Both are valid. I'm not at war against the other translations. Appeasement, release, and putting out the fire, nibbana. Another word for it would be kind of extinguishing the fire. And most of those are just the snippets that I've taken from longer suttas, and when you read just the whole sutta, it would just take way too much time, but these are just the little extracts that I can simply offer you, and which have been really helpful for me to understand what that really means, what that Nibbana really means. How we're going to do this is, I have a short sutta that explains very well what Nibbana means for the putting out of the fire in the mind, the greed, hate, and delusion, the hindrances, basically. And then another short sutta on how the Buddha meant it, more on the linear progress through the jhanas and entering Nirodha samapatti, and that was meant as also Nibbana. So this is all in the suttas. And so here on considering Nibbana as the putting out of the fire of the hindrances, which is something that you do everything, every time you 6R. Every time you recognize, release, relax, right there's relief. And that is a mini Nibbana. And the proof in the sutta is right here, where this is with the Brahmin Janusoni. And he went to the Awakened One, paid loving respects, and sat beside him and asked, "Dear Gautama, I hear it said, Nibbana is directly visible. Nibbana is directly visible. But how is it, dear Gautama? How is Nibbana directly visible, immediate, inviting, leading upwards, to be experienced by the wise for oneself?" Does that ring familiar? This is usually the quality of the Dhamma. These are all the qualities of the Dhamma, but here it is changed to Nibbana. So this is quite interesting. And now the Buddha simply explains it in a very concise way, talking about selfish desires. And he says, obsessed by selfish desires, Brahmin, overpowered by wants and needs, with a mind completely taken by it, people cause problems for themselves, cause problems for others, cause problems to everyone. And they experience mental agony, depression, and anxiety. But when people let go of selfish desires, they do not cause problems for themselves, they do not cause problems to others, and they do not experience mental agony, depression, and anxiety. This is how Nibbana is directly visible. So when we have a hindrance that arises, whether it's from a condition, we saw the whole dependent origination yesterday, so now you know how hindrances come up as we build them up. When we sit down in meditation, a hindrance comes up. Let's say it's impatience. Well, this was simply in the mind, and it just arose because we got quiet and we got to see it, the causes and conditions for it to arise and for us to practice came up, and now we have this wonderful opportunity to use it as our teacher, to use it to get better, and to release and relax it, experience relief. And then this is a mini Nibbana right here. Small little pieces of fire in the mind that we are putting out every time. And the imprint is getting slowly bigger and bigger and bigger. And after the next little sutta, we will go into a very light guided meditation on Nibbana. Seeing a few smiles here. Hopefully we're going to get there, but we'll see. I can't guarantee it. It's not. I wouldn't say like money back if you get it, or. So I'm not involved in all that. But we'll try, and mainly because I like to further the imprint on the mind. These words have ideas and concepts tied to them and images, and sometimes it can help to just bring those up in the mind. But Brahmin, when one experiences the complete disappearance of selfish desires, the complete disappearance of anger, and the complete disappearance of folly, this is how Nibbana is directly visible, immediate, inviting, leading upwards, to be experienced by the wise for oneself. Now, simply moving into the other aspect where Nibbana also means this idea of really going through the meditative states, the jhanas, and putting out, basically releasing the mind completely, consciousness itself, all the way through. And this is also understood as Nibbana. And here again, it starts with the same phrase, directly visible Nibbana. And this is a complete different sutta, by the way. Directly visible Nibbana. But to what extent did the awakened one speak of Nibbana as being directly visible? Here, friend, disengaged from the sense faculties and detached from unwholesome mental states, attended by thinking and imagining, with the blissful happiness born of letting go. One experiences and dwells in the first level of meditation. Does that sound familiar? To such an extent, the awakened one spoke of Nibbāna as being directly visible. Interesting. In a metaphorical way. Still, see, these ideas and these concepts, they are somewhat, loose. The Buddha was not really exactly strict and rigid about these terms that he was using. And that's why he says, in a metaphorical way here, this is Nibbāna. The first jhana is Nibbāna. The second jhana, and of course here, I am abridging it, so we're not going to go through all the jhanas again, but I think we've seen them enough on this retreat. But then the second jhana, he says the same thing. It is directly visible Nibbāna, here and now, in your own experience, because you're slowly extinguishing the mind, slowly releasing the mind. And now he ends, and of course the third, the fourth jhana, the plane of endless space, the plane of endless consciousness, the plane of nothingness, and the plane of neither perception and non-perception. And then going entirely beyond the plane between awareness and its limit. That is how I call neither perception or non-perception. One experiences and abides in the release from experiential awareness. This is Nirodha samapatti, or Sanya Vedayitta Nirodha. And by having seen with wisdom, by having seen with discernment this whole way, siksaring, that's what that means. Seeing the tension arising, siksaring that, releasing, relaxing. That is practicing using the Four Noble Truths as your template. So this is very profound. This is really profound insight through this whole path. To such an extent, the awakened one spoke of Nibbāna as being directly visible in a non-metaphorical way and in a literal manner. So here we have the previous ones, the previous meditation states are simply kind of a metaphor for Nibbāna. And here the Buddha, I can't remember, I think it's Ānanda, who says then that this Nirodha, this Nirodha samapatti is actually Nibbāna in a complete way, in a literal way.
So could you think of it as conditional liberations as the mind starts dropping various activities as it's... So a conditional liberation, so you're liberated from first the hindrances, then you're liberated from Pitaka vichara, then you're liberated from, in each sense you're liberating from a conditioned state until there's no more states.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah. Bingo.
Let's call it bingo from now on.
The bingo sutta. Great. Yeah, love it.
Excuse me, what are the suttas, please?
Yeah. So there's quite a few suttas in this discourse because I've just extracted exactly the bits. But this very sutta is... it's probably in the Book of Nines, number 47, Directly Visible Nibbāna. And please feel free to interrupt at any time. This is meant to be more interactive. Yes.
So incremental Nibbāna?
Incremental. I think these are all beautifully enriching, perspectives. So I say yes. Yeah, it's all true. Yes, Mark.
Where does the concept of path, knowledge, and fruition fit in?
In this specific context, or just in general?
Well, in describing the experience of Nibbāna.
Yeah, so technically, there is no direct correlation in the suttas that can be found between the attainment of Nirodha or Nibbana and the path and the fruition. So this is just a structure that is not found in the suttas. It seems to correlate in some ways to experiences that meditators have sometimes. But in my own researches, where the sources I found for this specific map or grid is from Mahasi Sayadaw's Manual of Insight. Actually, that's where you find a quite elaborate, where he's describing how you go through these different levels of insight, and then you get to Sankhara Upekkhañāna, like the equanimity with all formations, and then you stay with that for a while, and then you have a cessation, and there is a path attainment there, and then there's a fruition attainment with another cessation. And this model seems to be taken, like a lot of the headlines are taken from the Visuddhimagga towards the end, where I can't remember the chapter, but these are very closely correlated. I have been looking for that answer in the suttas. I haven't found that direct connection. So yeah. Sorry?
In the Dhamma Samhini. It's in that first book of the Abhidhamma.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Also, okay. Well, there you go. There you go.
So since you opened that
Pandora's box.
yeah, I won't say that. No, but you have a wonderful subject of knowledge and fruition. So, I mean, can you complete that thought?
So, what do I think that would mean?
Yeah, I mean, because you mentioned it, and so I think it would be wonderful if you describe what the difference is.
Between path and fruition. Right. Yeah, so basically I think, well, maybe not everybody is familiar, but there in Buddhism, in the Buddha's teaching, in the early texts anyways, there's known to be 4 different kinds of awakened people, the Arya Puggalas. And these noble people, or Aryas, they are called sometimes, they are stream enterers, once returner, non-returner, and Arahant. So this is in the qualities of the Sangha when we say these 4 types of people, the 8 kinds of individuals. This is the Sangha, basically, of the awakened ones. And so this means the 4 are the 4 Arya Puggalas, and the 8 are basically the 4 Arya Puggalas, path and fruition. So that's what that means. So there is a difference. I think, to my eyes, the difference is quite simple. The path is someone who's actually just practicing on that path. And the fruition is someone who has developed these qualities, and they are unshakable and firmly established within their minds, and they cannot go back down, kind of thing. So, for example, the Buddha mainly talked about stream entry at length. There is even like a Sotapatti, like a Samyutta, a whole chapter in the Samyutta Nikaya on stream entry. And this was often described as someone who is possessed of all 4 factors of stream entry, which was unwavering confidence in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and the virtues. Of course, stream entry means a lot, can mean a few more things, because we also know that there's the fetter model, where stream entry would be the abandoning of the 3 lower fetters, which is clinging to rites and rituals, Silabbata Paramasa, then doubt, Vicikicca, and Sakkaya Ditthi, personality belief in a personal self. So anyone who is on the path to developing these qualities I mean, this was not intended to be a talk on stream entry, but there's a lot of really great material on this. There's a lot to be said. I mean, like, we should have a month-long retreat. That's what I think. But
So, a burning question really about the fruit, you know, the
mhm,
experience plus the fruit.
Yes.
How would one know that? How would one know
yes,
that? How do they know?
yeah.
Or does someone tell them?
So, technically, only the Buddha declared these things. When we look at the suttas, even the Arahant disciples of the Buddha would never say, "Hey, you're a stream enterer." And the only references we have for that is basically at some point the Buddha got tired of people coming to him and saying, "Is this person a stream enterer? Like, my mom, she's been practicing for a long time. Is she a stream enterer?" Because it meant that you were not bound to the hell realms, and it was it was comforting to know that you're like, "Oh, okay, I made it past," So, so we're like stepping up a notch. So you got 7 lifetimes in either like the human realm or above in the sensuous deva realm. So it's a pretty good deal. And so obviously people really wanted to know. And so just so you know, traditionally people, the monks, they would come down from, after the rains, they would come down from wherever they were in India, and they would come down and walk to see the Buddha. And usually the rains residence, it became basically a 4 months retreat for the monks. And so obviously a lot of people were really dedicated during these months, and they were only meditating because monks cannot move around during Vas, we call it, the monsoon season. And so we have to find a place, we have to stay there for 3 months at least, and the only thing to do is to meditate. And so people would usually break through during those times. Like, a lot of people would just meditate a lot, and then they would achieve quite wonderful states. And then they would come down to the Buddha and ask him, or declare. Basically, it was either asking, so is this person a stream enterer, or like, what is their attainment? Or somebody would just say, like, there is no more defilements in my mind. So, and the Sangha got quite large towards the end there, and the Buddha was asked a lot. And he said, "Okay, Ānanda, I will tell you a way that you can know for yourself if you're a stream enterer or not." Because it is tiresome for the Tathagata when people keep coming to him. And so he said, when you have unwavering faith in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and the virtues of the Aryas, which lead to samadhi, which lead to this practice. When you have unwavering confidence in these things, that whatever somebody can come and tell you, no, this is not it, and it's like, it doesn't actually matter, because you know the Dhamma. And nobody can come and tell you you don't know what you're talking about. You just know. You just know how it works. You understand dependent origination. You've known enough. So there's a lot of different understandings of what stream entry is nowadays and how it is attainable. In this particular practice, there is a lot of emphasis on the jhanas and meditation, and there's a really clear path that leads there, technically. But in other traditions, there are a lot of different understandings around that, which are not necessarily rooted in that same path. Like, people will develop more like right view, for example. They'll try to see reality in very specific ways in terms of dependent origination, in terms of the 6 senses, and how it arises, how it passes away. So there's all kinds of ways, and people... Well, I have quite a few people coming to me with these questions. So, but in the end, whatever path one will be taking, stream entry results in having these 4 factors within, and also not clinging to rites and rituals, not having any doubt which is basically unwavering confidence. The vicikicca here, the doubt, is not like, should I have coffee or tea this morning? This is about the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and the virtues. So that's the doubt there that is abandoned. And then personality belief. So when one understands dependent origination and the five aggregates, one cannot believe in the personal self anymore. It's just impossible. We still get caught, still get impatient, still get to take things personally. It's more of an understanding more than anything. It's not the fruition of arahantship, which is about letting go of conceit, mana. Mana is what is really difficult to let go of. So this is really all of the taking personal, the hindrances. But the understanding that there is no self really behind all of this happens at stream entry, technically. And the fruit, I believe there's one sutta where the Buddha says, and for someone who attains the fruit, one has seen and understood dependent origination. So that really sets it in. But the Buddha says, if you attain the path, for example, before you die or as the process of dying happens, you will attain the fruit then. So that's quite encouraging also, I think. And that is just the sutta I'm referencing here. So it's not something I'm making up. Yes. Well, I think there was a question before. Yeah, Alan.
Okay.
Is it Alan? Yes. Okay. I can't see very well.
You attain the path on or before you die, as or before you die, you attain the fruit. Are we talking about stream entry or something further down the track?
Usually for any of the attainments. Yeah.
So, what is attaining the path of stream entry?
Attaining the path of stream entry, yeah.
What is that?
There is an other sutta, Nandiya Sutta, it's in the Samyutta Nikaya, and the Buddha answers this question very well. Bhante, those wise practitioners who are thoroughly and completely devoid of all four qualities or all four factors of stream entry, are they not living in negligence? Nandiya, those who are thoroughly and completely devoid of all four qualities of stream entry, these I call people who stand outside this teaching, in the midst of those who do not practice. Interesting. So what would that mean for a group of 45 people in front of me? Well, yeah, because there's also a faith follower and a Dhamma follower. These are also steps before stream entry. Like don't pour concrete out of these terms. Like they're flexible, and they're just meant to inspire us. Like Saddhanusari. Saddhanusari is a faith follower, so someone who's seen the Buddha or encountered the Dhamma and just like gained faith. They don't really know much about it, but they just have that faith. They have that faith in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, and the virtues. And just this the Buddha said, these people, when they pass, they're bound for the heavens. They're bound for the Devalokas, at least. And then the Dhammanusari, which are the Dhamma followers. These are the people who are starting to study a little bit more. And they know a little bit more of the Dhamma. And so basically the Saddhanusari, the Dhammanusari are kind of like another way of talking about stream entry path, from what I understand anyways. So anybody that's practicing that is kind of, Rachel.
I have a question for
Yeah.
you. If you're done with that section on the two suttas, I'm really interested in your take on, I'll just give you a couple of phrases about Nibbāna or something that I take to be Nibbāna. So in the Satipatthana Sutta, the third observation of the mind, right? Talk about liberated mind, and then liberated citta, and then in the Book of Ones, of course, it says this citta is luminous, but it is covered over by all of these defilements. So there seems to be not just a negation, this is my hope, right? Not just a negation of defilement, but some positive qualities to Nibbāna, like luminosity, sublime, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then it speaks of the unconditioned element, right, in several suttas. So what's your take on that? Is that element different from Nibbāna, or is it what the mind strikes upon and then attains to Nibbāna, or what do you think the suttas have to say about that?
Yeah, so that's why I have that sequence at the beginning of the book, because this is also how Katukurunde Nyanananda Bhante, the one who wrote Concept and Reality, Bhante Vimaramsi was a big fan of that book. He also wrote a pretty lengthy set on discourses on Nibbāna, and he starts with that, and Bhikkhu Analayo is the one who translated that into English. Yeah. Katukurunde Nyanananda Bhante was his teacher with Bhikkhu Bodhi. And they're both quite influential in his... So yeah, that's that Etam Santam, Etam Panitam, Yadidam Sabba Sankara Samato. That sequence we read every morning, that is by far the most used in the suttas, the most used definition for Nibbāna. It's in the Mālukya Sutta, it's in the Ānanda Sutta, where and it's said, like there's a sutta where it's said like every jhana, like one can, how does one reach anagami basically? And he says, well, one sees like the first jhana with all the, says the definition, and then he says this is, and then one thinks this is peaceful, this is sublime. That whole verse on Nibbāna, the complete letting go of tension, cessation, Nibbāna. And then he says that after every jhana. So one trains like that, to not remain attached to any jhana, but to always let go, let go, let go, not remaining attached to any of these stages. And so this is how one lets go of all of this and can enter, basically, become an anagami, a non-returner. And it's used in many other suttas. To go back to your question, I think it is really possible to correlate all these experiences. I was just thinking about that today, and there's so many words actually that the Buddha used. He used the asavakayang, like the destruction of the taints, what I called the stilling of the mind that I explained yesterday. The yoga kema, the freedom from the yoke, the freedom from slavery. He used Nibbāna, and the mind that is luminous. These qualities, there are, I think it all points out, and when he talks about the signless state, the radiance, obhasa, basically these are all, I think these are all words that we're using to describe something that is really hard to describe in the end. So.
Bhante Vimaramsi always, that third foundation of mindfulness, it's in the Samapatti Sutta, the Ānanda Sutta. He said that liberation is the liberation of jhana. And it was, when he explained it further, it seems someone said it was, they were calling it incremental Nibbāna. I think that is the sense that Bhante meant when he said that. And when you experience jhana, it does feel like liberation, right?
Yeah. It is. I mean, there's suttas where the Buddha, like black on white, he says these are temporary liberations of the mind. Jhana is temporary liberation of the mind, and the Arya Puggalas, or the attainments themselves, these are unshakable. The jhanas are the temporary liberations, and then the 4 levels of awakening, these are like the kind of the unshakable liberations. Or it can culminate, yes, it culminates in the fruit of arahantship, but the fruits of any of the levels of awakening is also unshakable, because you can't come back down. So it's really interesting how rich this whole gradual training is. And it doesn't happen all at once. So, yeah, it's wonderful. Yes?
This is just, so I was always had this idea that like you become a stream enter by reaching Nibbana, because then obviously you did some meditations, you were great, so yeah, rites and rituals are not necessary. No more belief in the self, you just saw all that. So I don't quite understand like how that relates to path and fruition. That's like my idea, not right, or
yeah. Well, when you practice in this way the whole of the path and you attain that cessation, and you know it's not guaranteed that you're not going to fall away from that, and some people have, and Bhante even knew that. He didn't. He also said that you could fall away from that attainment, just the path attainment kind of thing. What would be called the path attainment. What my own understanding of this is that once you do the practice properly and you use the 6 R's, right effort, to go through all of the jhanas with the Brahma Viharas, and at the end with the clear mind, the still mind, which is just basically an advanced satipatthana practice. It's chittanupasi, basically, seeing mind as mind, in one of the clearest way. And then you understand dependent origination through all of that. If you understand, like I've talked yesterday, how the mind is completely fabricated, and it is made up, so sankhara paccaya vijnana, so the sankharas bring about that consciousness. And when there is a cessation of all, or the calming down of all sankharas, which some people have been reporting to, like this kind of like really, what was the word today? Staccato kind of frames coming. I can't find him. Anyways, it's possible at that level of the mind that one would see the fabricated nature of consciousness itself and how one can release it completely. And this is very, 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 very profound understanding. And this is probably going to stick for a long time, because that a person who understands all of that understands the Dhamma, basically. And if they really understand truly, deeply within themselves, they're not going to really fall away from that. So I would say that if all those factors are in place and someone really understands what that experience was, not just like, you know, consciousness blinked and, oh, my consciousness blinked. It's like, well, there's a few ways this can happen. But there is a little bit more richness to it, a little bit more depth of understanding. Then I would definitely consider that as valid. And it's not for me to say these things. It's for that person to say how they've understood it and how unshakable their confidence in that is. And so as it relates for fruition is just basically just really having that firm confidence in that. So one could have these experiences before, but still not be totally sure. They still have to work it out and do it maybe a few more times to just be really settled into it. And then, yeah, there comes a time when somebody can really know for themselves, for sure.
It's weird stuff. I'm seeing what I'm seeing, and I believe this. Is this for real? Arises in my mind from time to time.
Yes. I don't think you're the only one.
That's why it's like, how do they know what they know without you know, like there's no Buddha to say right or nah, you're off.
Yeah.
How do you know what you know?
There is a way. There is a way you can know for sure. If you really direct your mind at understanding exactly what's happening, if really you have a deep understanding of all the experience through the jhanas, and it relates through all of the Dhamma that was expounded by the Buddha, with the Satipatthanas, with right effort, with the 7 supports of awakening. And if it all makes sense with the Eightfold Path and dependent origination, then...
This is why I think the Buddha Dhamma is so profound, because it's explaining. It's explaining these things. As Rachel says, there's a lot of... People are experiencing things in many traditions, but and even in the Buddha Dhamma, you know, when I came up, we didn't talk about it as thoroughly as this early on, and so this is very, very helpful in that way.
Good.
But I'm just saying, you know, people have experiences and they could just blow them off because it's like weird, and who am I going to talk about this to?
Yeah.
What does this mean?
You know, technically, people have to know the Dhamma to be stream enterers. You know, there's no way around it. If you don't know the Eightfold Path, you don't know dependent origination, you don't know the jhanas. Even whatever experience you have, if you don't know the Dhamma, I mean, you can't have unwavering confidence in the Dhamma. I'm sorry. This is just how it works. And there's other suttas where the Buddha says, you know, studying the Dhamma, like learning, is really important. And these are not suttas that we tend to bring up on retreats because we have more important suttas to talk about. But this is also really good general knowledge to have. It's like there is a lot of suttas where the Buddha talks about learning the Dhamma. One has to learn it. And how does one learn it? One goes and pays respect to whoever, a monk, a teacher, and then asks for the teaching, and then listens carefully. There's a beautiful array of those teachings in the canon. It's just that for direct meditation practice, we kind of want to nudge people in, forward. Yeah.
And then in the end, though,
yes.
It won't, until you can get up and say, I have no more defilements in my mind, you still got work to do, whatever it is.
Yeah, that's... Yes. Yeah. Just keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was, to me, explained as well, the precepts are strongly related to philosophy as well. You will know because you probably won't be breaking the precepts a lot. Probably not at all.
Yeah, it becomes really like kind of like a second nature of like being completely, repelled by breaking any of the precepts. It just feels just wrong. It's like, why would I do this to my mind, kind of thing. It's just...
So it's a sensitivity, are you saying?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. It's not that unintentionally something could happen and then you could break it, or like, or you could break it but then you won't feel good at all. And yeah. But usually you won't. Yeah. Yes.
But you can experience cessation sort of whenever, right? Like you don't necessarily have to be in the 8th jhana or like on retreat, right? Because like you hear stories of say like Ānanda who okay, it was the further past, but okay, he got it when he was like falling asleep on his pillow. Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he got that the fruition basically. I'm not sure if it was cessation per se, but he got fruition then. But in any case, I do believe that anything can happen in that sense. And it does. Like I have people talking to me and asking about different ways that they're practicing, and there's a lot of really interesting things that happen for people out there. just letting you know. But I would say this is definitely the highway, the clear path. So yeah. Okay. Yes.
So I'm a big fan of studying Dhamma.
Yes.
But it also seems like maybe the bar is being set pretty high for a stream enterer in that, there are a lot of stories in the suttas of people just hearing the gradual talk who have never heard the Dhamma before.
Yeah.
And they're awake.
Yeah.
And all, the keynote phrase is just all there's of the nature to arise, that too is of the nature to cease.
Yes.
Which is an encapsulation of Paticca Samuppada attained stream entry right away was just the Four Noble Truths after hearing Dhamma, Sila, the Devas, and what's the fourth one? Oh, the benefits of renunciation.
Yes.
So like that happened very quickly, and it's not to say that the rest of the Dhamma wouldn't have made sense to them afterwards, but they didn't spontaneously get that knowledge either. Right?
Yeah, that's great. I'm happy to have somebody who's studied it because that's something that I usually bring up, and not a lot of people know about this because it's mainly in the Vinaya, that Vinaya Samukkasa kind of sequence where the Buddha, actually in the Vinaya, that's one of the only place where you find these sequences where he's going to teach a whole crowd and uplift their mind, because that's something that people don't really know when they read the suttas. But the Buddha, when he was teaching, he would uplift everybody's mind first, and he would make them glad and happy and uplifted by these 4 kinds of talks.
And that's why when the Devas came up earlier, I actually think it could be a really important subject, because that's what it was designed to do, was to gladden the mind. Right?
Yes, and this is India. I mean, so it's like, it is still today an uplifting topic, you know? It's like, yeah, you want to believe in a God, you know, like, go to India. It's like, it's like you have free card.
Did you forget to invite the Devas?
Yes, yes. No, they're here. Enlighten the whole of the grove. Oh yeah, totally.
But it doesn't necessarily mean in this life they would spontaneously have a knowledge of the 12 steps of dependent origination and you know, the 3 characteristics and all the other pieces.
Yeah. I mean that as like fruition, like the fruition of stream entry, like when it's really firmly set, kind of thing, like knowing the dependent origination.
But you were saying earlier that path and fruition attainments do not show up in the sutras at all, right? That's an abhidhamma.
Oh, I just mean like the correlation between the attainment of cessation in relation to path and fruition. Yeah. So basically, like you go through the jhanas, you go into cessation, you're a stream enterer. That's nowhere to be found in the suttas. That's what I meant. I'm not sure what was carried through. I mean, and that's what I've been trying to explain this whole time. Okay. Oops.
In 1.1, where Buddha describes Sariputta's enlightenment, he goes through and describes it. He doesn't describe at the end, and then he was Sotapanna, and then Sakya, the other guy. It's just he was awakened.
He doesn't explain this, the Aryapuggalas. Yeah.
Yes, there's no sutta where he goes through it like that.
Yeah, there's no sutta reference for that correlation between cessation and attainments. I've never seen that. Yeah. Yes?
I just wanted to mention that I found reading the Therīgātha really inspiring, the poems of the awakened nuns, and that a lot of the women found their way to awakening through grief in many ways, or at least it talks about that being like the dukkha that then like led them to the search, but that just on the topic of awakening, I've really found that beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could have a lot of dukkha in your life, and if you don't know the path, then it could take a long time. But yes, I think when you know the path, and that's why I put my composting toilet at the top yesterday, is that you know what to do with the dukkha, and then you can use it, and then we also call that samvega, right? So the urgency that arises. Yeah, I should practice more. Yeah. Thank you. I thought I saw a hand. Okay.
If you would repeat those 4 topics that the Buddha gave to the lay people, I think.
Yeah, so the talk on generosity, virtue, the devas, and renunciation. The benefit, the danger in sensual pleasures, and the benefit in renouncing them. Basically, I think that's...
And the Four Noble Truths.
Yes, and then when everybody's mind would be like, woohoo, he would drop the Four Noble Truths. It's like, there you go, you're all stream enters now.
One person whose mind was right, he would still...
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, definitely. Makes me think of that, like that one sutta when he's just like, is it the root of all things, when he just like explained this whole thing and the monks were not delighted. So it's like the one sutta. It's like, no Buddha. This one was not good. Yeah.
Bhante, I heard Gil Fronsdal give a presentation about one sutta, and I have never been able to find it, where the Buddha's talking to some other monks or somebody about a man who was an alcoholic, and
yes.
Okay.
What is it? Saranaki.
I couldn't remember his name, but yeah.
What sutta is that?
Just Saranaki.
Just Saranaki. Okay.
So if he's a drunkard, like, and he's a stream enterer, then everybody's a stream enterer. That's what he said. I was like, no, he really took on the path before he died, so that's why. Because that person was just drinking and not displaying really good virtue, and but as it happens with dukkha at the end of his life, since it was quite eminent, he was fortunate enough to know the Dhamma, to know the Buddha, and to have a clear mind in the end, and basically decided to take on the training, basically.
Angulimala was the healer.
Yes.
He's collected. Was a thief.
Nice garden of fingers. Yes.
And he got it.
Yeah. I mean, if Angulimala could make it, yeah.
I don't want to open another can of worms, but
okay.
Bhante Ramsey would talk about the oh wow element, and I was wondering.
The oh wow element.
Yeah.
That's good. Yes, great. Yeah. It seems like it would be nice to have like a fourth contact, right, after cessation, but there's only three. There's like signless, voidness, undirectedness, and then like the oh wowness, oh wowness contact, amazingness contact. But unfortunately, I can't really find like tangible reference for that, except that, when you look at him like attaining awakening and like sitting in bliss for 7 days, I mean, that's kind of implied how he would explain the 7 factors of awakening and how they are like rafters to a peaked roof. They all point to the peak. They all lead to Nibbana, basically. That's what he said about the 7 factors. And joy is one of them. Well, piti, however we want to translate that word. It's true that there's a lot of joy, there's a lot of oh wow-ness that can arise. But when mental priming also is a thing, where somebody can tell you what to look for and you're going to see it because you're expecting to see that. So that also can play in the overall scheme of things. And there's a few things that, that could have happened because of that. And that's an interesting thing because often that really strong joy, and that can happen after a kind of a post-cessation experience, that is usually where we talk about this oh wow moment, where everything is like the thing about like seeing things in like what it's called, like super HD, kind of like 6K. really crisp, like seeing really like sharp details. And it's not in the suttas, but it seems also to be kind of coming with that whole package of when the mind is really completely detached and has let go of everything. It's like it's a really straight, pristine lens for, and all the senses, basically. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say the poetry canon is also really good for that. The Therīgātha.
Yeah, the Theragātha, yeah.
The Theragātha, but also in your puja, I think you put the paean of joy, the "Oh house builder, you are seeing you should build no house again."
Yes.
It's poetry celebration.
Yeah, I mean, indirectly, we have a lot of evidence. And yeah, the Therāgātha, the Therīgātha are like probably like some of the best testimonials for that, for sure. I was actually really enjoying, I was translating some of the verses in the Therāgātha in Sri Lanka, and there was like this cliff with all these caves and the peacocks kind of chanting, and like I was translating that sutta where it's talking about like the following bliss after bliss, and the peacocks were crying and all that. So that was like, and I felt a lot of inspiration out of it, because that's really how it feels. Like when you read the Therāgātha and the Therīgātha, it's just talking, a lot of them talk about, how blissful it is. I mean, there's a few suttas we could look into, but so I'm not sure, so maybe take the pulse of the whole thing. Are we making good time, or how should we do it, Master?
Please. Let's see. So it's, we've been in here for a while. So
yeah.
How much time are you thinking?
Well, I mean, I just prepared some material for a guided meditation to Nibbana, but I mean, we can skip it. It's all good.
This case. Your Honor.
I guess said like that, it's kind of maybe next life, whatever. Oh, I'm not on the right document here. Okay. I'll try to just breeze through it, and basically yeah. Have to be centered. This is serious after all. So like I said earlier, these are all suttas that really help me understand what Nibbana is. And I think I gave a talk earlier on that in Canada, so you can also look at that. It's around the same suttas, maybe a little bit more expounded. But the general understanding of this is just to relax, sit in your chair. We're all going to meditate. I'll be reading you and walking you through these suttas. And just to hear the words, just to hear it said, it will make some kind of impression in your mind. And just that is the gift. Just that is what needs to happen. So, just taking a comfortable position. You can take off your glasses. Bringing up a light smile, closing your eyes, letting go of everything that's in your mind. Allowing the river of your perceptions and thoughts and feelings, sensations to just wash away, wash through. And sensory gratifications here and now, sensory gratifications that are to come, sensory perceptions here and now, sensory perceptions that are to come, matter here and now, or matter that is to come, material perceptions here and now, and material perceptions that are to come, the perception of the jhanas, the perception of the steadfast, the perception of the arupa jhanas, the perception of the plane of nothingness, this clear mind, and the plane between awareness and its release, neither perception nor non-perception. This is personality as far as personality goes. But this is the deathless Ānanda, the unbinding of the mind through not clinging, Nibbāna. Going beyond the plane of endless consciousness, aware of nothing in particular. One understands and abides in the plane of bare awareness, clear nothingness. At that time, the subtle but true perception that one previously had of endless consciousness ceases. At that time, there is a subtle but true perception of bare awareness, nothingness. And at that time, one becomes conscious of this subtle yet true perception of bare awareness, the clear mind, still mind. Up to here, one is conscious of oneself. And gradually, one stage after the other, one arrives at the summit of perception, understanding mental activity is worse for me. Freedom from mental activity is better. If I were to incline or engage my mind in any way, these fine meditative perceptions would cease, and grosser perceptions would be seen to arise. Therefore, one does not incline nor engages one's mind in any way. When one does not incline nor forces one's mind, then uninclined and disengaged, even those finest perceptions cease, and gross perceptions are not seen to arise. One enters cessation. This is how the complete release from perceptual awareness is understood and experienced gradually. When one enters upon the release from perceptual awareness, one does not think, I will enter the release from perceptual awareness, nor I am entering the release from perceptual awareness, nor I am in the release from perceptual awareness. Rather, it is because one has previously cultivated one's mind in the appropriate way that it leads one to that very state. There exists, monks, an unborn, beingless, unmade, unfabricated state. If no such unborn, beingless, unmade, and unfabricated state would exist, no release could ever be experienced from what is born, what exists, what is made up, and what is fabricated. But there is an unborn, beingless, unmade, unfabricated state. Therefore, a release can be discerned from what is born, what exists, what is made up, and what is fabricated. For the dependent, there is instability. For the independent, there is no instability. When there is no instability, there is calm. When there is calm, there is no inclining. When there is no inclining, there is no coming or going. When there is no coming or going, there is no passing away and rebirth. When there is no dying and rebirth, there is neither here nor there, nor anything between the two. Just this is the end of trouble. There is, monks, a state where there is no earth, no water, no fire, no air, no body, no plane of endless space, no plane of endless consciousness, no plane of bare awareness, no plane between perception and non-perception. No this world, nor any world beyond. No sun and no moon. There, monks, I say, there is no arriving, no departing, no abiding, no passing away, no coming upon, no falling away. It is unmoving, without an object or support. Just this is the end of trouble. For those whom mental leakages have completely dried up, for whom the signless and empty liberation has become the field in which they abide. Their minds are not easy to discern, like the path of birds in the sky. Allowing yourself to contact this voidness, this signless, this transparency that is more transparent than transparency itself. Where there is no holding on, no clinging, no intellectualizing, no awareness, not even consciousness. Carrying this back into your life here and now. And you can slowly open up your eyes again. Welcome your senses again. The seen as only the seen, the heard as only the heard. I see a few smiles. So how was that? Good. We got thumbs up. On one last note, this is my last talk with you tonight for this retreat. Before I left for Sri Lanka, a few months before, I was in Canada, and I wrote this poem. And it's a short poem, and this might be my gift to you as an end of the retreat gift. And I wanted to thank you all for your beautiful work that you've been doing. It's been wonderful to see you progress in this amazing meditation that is very dear to my heart, and to count you all as Kalyana Mittas now, beautiful friends. So this sutta, this poem is called The Drum. We beat the drum of the deathless, sounding soothing grounds, cleansing, a no man's land in the four quarters, sounding the beyond, a sound you cannot hear. We, the silent nation, the creed of freedom, beat on the skin of this world, shed of its yearning, with the mallet of everything let go, on the frame, wheel-like, eight-spoked, carved out of love and bliss bone deep, besides a fire going out. Above, the trees are swaying, a shimmering sea of stars, a rising dawn. Deep shades of blue on a jet black mirror. Vision so clear, all disappears in bright darkness where seeing cannot be seen. I wish you a beautiful end of this retreat. Thank you. And let's share merits. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty powers, share these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation.